He was standing in the river waiting for the pastor's hands, his chin lifted, eyes squeezed shut, trying to be brave in front of the crowd. Along the bank, relatives and neighbors watched in a loose line, murmuring prayers and holding phones, the ceremony moving one person at a time through the shallow water. The Omo River looked the way it always did from a distance, slow and brown and ordinary. Then the surface beside the boy folded inward, like something heavy had rolled underneath it, and the water exploded. In December 2020, in southern Ethiopia, a church congregation gathered at the Omo River for a baptism. The Omo is not a small creek you can step over. It is a working river used for washing, fishing, and travel. And it runs through a region where people live close to the water because there is no other reliable source. It is also habitat for Nile crocodiles, animals that can lie motionless for long stretches and then strike with a speed that feels impossible until you see it. Witnesses later described the attack as silent until it wasn't. There was no long warning, no visible shape cutting toward the group. One moment, adults were steadying the boy, and the pastor was speaking, and the next, a force hit from the side, and the child vanished in a jerk of foam and mud. The crocodile's jaws clamped down, and the boy's body was dragged sideways, water pouring over his head as the animal tried to pull him into deeper current. Panic ripped through the line. The pastor and the nearest men lunged forward on instinct, grabbing the boy's arms and shoulders, trying to keep his head above water. Someone screamed his name. Another person yelled for people on shore to help. The crocodile thrashed, its tail driving against the riverbed, and for a moment it looked as if it would win simply by being stronger. In a river like the Omo, you do not have tools. You have hands and whatever courage you can find in a heartbeat. Several men held on, planting their feet against slippery stones and mud, using their bodies like anchors. Others swung down at the crocodile's head, aiming for the eyes and snout, because that is where anyone would aim. The water churned around them, and the boy's limbs jerked as the animal tried to reposition its grip. The rescuers were close enough to feel the animal's rough hide, close enough to know that if it turned and snapped, it could take them too. The struggle lasted seconds, but it felt longer to everyone watching. At some point, the crocodile's grip loosened, whether from blows, exhaustion, or the sheer resistance of so many hands. The boy was ripped free and hauled toward the bank, coughing and limp, streaked with blood and river mud. People scrambled backward up the slope, pulling him away from the edge as if the river itself had become a threat that could reach up and take him again. Only then did the damage become visible. The boy had severe wounds where the crocodile had clamped down. People pressed clothing and towels against torn flesh, trying to slow the bleeding. Someone kept shouting that they needed a vehicle, that they needed to move now. There was no ambulance waiting beside the ceremony. There were no trained medics on the bank. The first response was the community itself, hands holding pressure, voices trying to keep the boy awake, relatives praying out loud because they had nothing else to do while the minutes dragged. He was rushed to medical care as quickly as the area allowed. In rural regions, reaching a clinic can mean long drives on rough roads, and time matters when blood loss and shock are involved. Crocodile bites are especially dangerous not only because of crushing injury, but because river water and an animal's mouth carry bacteria that can cause serious infection. Doctors had to stabilize him, clean wounds, and manage damage that could not be undone in a single day. The survival story did not end at the riverbank. It continued in treatment rooms, bandages, and long recovery. Reports about the incident spread quickly beyond the immediate community. The story was simple and horrifying. A child attacked by a crocodile during a baptism, saved only because adults in the water refused to let go. Images circulated showing the congregation in the river moments before the strike, emphasizing how normal the scene had been until the attack. That contrast was what made people react so strongly. It wasn't a hunt or a dare. It was a religious rite, and the danger was already there, hidden beneath the surface. The animal involved was identified in reports as a Nile crocodile, a species common in parts of East Africa. Nile crocodiles can remain submerged with only eyes and nostrils above water, conserving energy until they decide to move. In muddy rivers, visibility is poor, and even people who know the risks can be caught off guard. Attacks are not daily events, but they are not unheard of either, and that uncertainty is what makes rivers like the Omo both essential and feared. In the aftermath, people argued about what should change. Some asked why baptisms were done in known crocodile habitat. Others pointed out that the river is central to life, and safer alternatives are not always available. For many families, the choice is not between a safe location and a dangerous one. It is between the river and nothing. Community leaders discussed being more vigilant, choosing different spots when possible, and keeping stronger adults positioned near children. But everyone understood that there is no perfect control over wild water. For the boy, survival came with a cost. Healing from severe wounds is painful and slow, and the memory of being pulled underwater can linger long after the skin closes. For the people who saved him, the event became a permanent image. Hands slipping on wet arms, the violent churn, the moment the child finally surfaced free. Their actions were not a plan. They were a refusal to accept what was happening. In the days that followed, the family's focus narrowed to a single question: would he keep improving? Severe bite injuries can require repeated wound care, stitches, and sometimes surgery to repair muscle and skin. Pain control, antibiotics, and monitoring for fever became part of daily life. Every bandage change was a reminder of how close the river had come to taking him. When he was finally stable enough to rest at home, the recovery still continued: limited movement, careful cleaning, and the slow return of strength. Neighbors who had watched the attack checked in constantly. Some brought food, others came to sit quietly with the family, offering help in the only ways available. In communities where faith and daily life are tightly linked, the baptism that nearly became a funeral turned into a story people told with a mix of fear and gratitude. It was a warning not to be careless, and also a testament to how quickly people can act when a child is in danger. No one on that riverbank could rewind time and choose a different moment. All they could do was carry the lesson forward: keep children close, watch the waterline, and respect what lives beneath the surface, even when everything seems ordinary. The boy's scars became part of his life, but so did the fact that he survived, pulled from the jaws of something built to kill, because other human beings refused to release their grip. The Omo River continued to flow the next day, as if nothing had occurred. People still had to wash and fish and cross. Yet for those who witnessed the baptism, the waterline carried a different meaning. The boy survived because ordinary people reacted with extraordinary force, holding him in place when a predator tried to claim him. He lived badly injured because the community turned a moment of terror into a rescue. Thank you for listening to Horrifying Survival Stories. Subscribe for more true stories of survival against impossible odds.